All right, my friends, we are diving into the nervous system. Talk to me, please. The purpose, the main function of our nervous system. Give me a raised hand. Please. Okay, so being able to sense, that's what we call our sensory nerves, right? We can sense things happening around us, right? I can feel, oh, this is a table. Oh, this is a bag. I can see each of you in your seats. Okay? So sensoring around us. What else? Is your life complete if you can just sense things? You want to be able to do something, right? Yeah. A paraplegic, they can sense stuff, right? They can see what's going on. They can even feel in some places, but they can't actually move, right? So there's sensory and motor. Sir? And pain. So what's the role of pain? Danger. Something is wrong. Folks think, oh, if only I could have no pain. No. That's a big problem. Because you know that little tiny stone in your shoe that you take out after 30 seconds because it hurts your foot, it's irritating? If someone has no pain, that stays in there. That develops a sore, develops a blister. Eventually, they cut their leg off because it's gotten gangrene and infected because they can't feel the pain. Does this make sense? So pain is good. It does give us some warning. All right. So our nervous system is made up of two kind of pieces, neurons and neuroglia. The neurons are what get all the credit, right? These are the things that carry the signals either from, let's take your hand, from your hand to your brain. That's your sensory, right? And then from your brain to your hand. That would be your motor, right? But the neuroglia also they're like the foundation. They like do all the things that make the nervous system work. You know? Like us teachers get a lot of credit at school, you know, for doing the things we do. But the administrators and the janitors and Mr. Rowe, and these are the folks that actually keep the place going. Does that make sense? And we just do the upfront, more public pieces. Does that make sense? They're the behind the scenes, exactly. Okay? They're showing you, again, your fancy piece, and you all have seen this before, that here's our cell body. And again, we're focusing on a neuron. The dendrites up on top, the axon down on the bottom, and then here are the neuroglial cells that are doing a variety of pieces, a variety of functions all around them. I thought there was a picture of those neuroglial cells. There they are. That's over on page 227 in your textbook. And again, in the past, I would have gone through each and every one of these, and you would have known all the different pieces of them. On your piece, I have neuroglial cells and why are they important. So much more generalized, right? I'm not actually asking you to know all the different types and what each of them do. But you have pieces like astrocytes and microglial cells, oligodendrocytes, the ependymal cells. Let's go briefly, quickly through those pieces. This is here over on page 226 of the neuroglia. What does the microglial cells do? Yep, exactly. Those 4 or 5 that are listed there. So I'm not asking you to know all the different pieces for your test. No, I'm just looking for you to understand that neuroglias are those support cells, and you could talk about some of the functions they do.
Okay, so not
the specifics. No, but I want to go through those with you quickly. What do the microglial cells do? Support by what? Phagocytosis, right? So these are the police. These are like the cleanup cells, right? They're phagocytizing bacteria and cellular debris, and they also form scars. Okay, when you cut the nervous system, when there's a problem there, the microglial are what fill in, make the scar tissue. Same thing when you cut the integumentary system, it's not new skin that gets laid down, right? It's that connective tissue, that fibrous connective tissue. We cool? All right, how about our oligodendrocytes? Myelin. Okay, and we'll talk much more about this. The oligodendrocytes are there in the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. The Schwann cells, which are over on page 227, those guys are in the peripheral nervous system. So maybe let's back up for a quick second so I can use those terms and you know what I'm talking about. Here's the brain. Here's the spinal cord. Those are the central nervous system. Okay, the control centers. This is the parts that are taking care of the main parts and pieces, right? Then we move into the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system has two parts that we just talked about a minute ago. Stuff coming into the brain, stuff going away from the brain. The stuff coming in is called what? Stuff coming into the brain. There's afferent and efferent, yeah. But I'm talking about even just sensory. Sensory, right? That would be the afferent, stuff coming in. And then going out, from the brain going out, that's the motor. So peripheral means away from the center, right? So that would be all of the nerves that we'll talk about going down to your arms or down to your legs or to your heart or to your stomach. Those would be peripheral nerves. The central stuff would be your brain and your spinal cord. And then that motor we can even break into two different pieces. There's the somatic nervous system, which that's the stuff you can control. When I say, Lauren, raise your hands, she can, I think, raise her hands. Yes, you can. Okay, good. Yes. So her somatic system is working. Her autonomic is not something she can control. The autonomic deals with smooth muscles and cardiac muscles and the glands of the endocrine system. You know, I can't say to Lauren, stop digesting. She can't. No, it just does, right? It just happens. Stop your heartbeat, Aaron. No, he can't, right? It just keeps going. Does that make sense? That's very smart. You're correct. Autonomic nervous system. Are we cool? There's some terms to understand these different control pieces. Anybody know where that autonomic nervous system is mostly controlled in your brain? Like stuff like breathing and heartbeats. Where is that controlled mostly in your brain? Anyone know? Your brainstem. Your brainstem. Again, we'll talk more about these pieces. All right, quickly back to the neuroglia. Our astrocytes, those are like the structural support. Can you see how those guys are just attached with lots of different arms kind of holding things up? That microscope picture that we showed a second ago, I would bet that these neuroglia they're showing you are more astrocytes that are just kind of holding pieces up. And last but not least, in these neuroglial cells are your ependymal cells. And those are epithelial-like cells that form very specialized parts of the brain, like the choroid plexuses and the ventricles and the central canal of the spinal cord. We'll talk about all these things. But again, they're more skin-like, more epithelial-like.
If I squeeze my arm, then am I just drawing that?
No, not necessarily. Again, if you squeeze too hard, sure, there's possibility of that, yeah. But not just light pressure, no. No, it's not going to do any problems. We're cool so far, my friends? All right. Let's talk about an actual nerve then. This nervous, the axon or the nerve, the neuron, that's the word I want, thank you. The neuron structure. On page 229, you have a very nice diagram. That is one of the ones that I do want you to be comfortable with, knowing the pieces of this diagram. So let's talk a bit about what do dendrites do? Okay. So let's talk about one neuron in particular, okay? And it's got dendrites at the top, right, and an axon at the bottom. We cool? I'm just going to clarify what you said a little bit more. The dendrites up here, what are their jobs? To receive. Okay? So they are connected to the axons of other neurons to get the signal from them. Does that make sense? It's exactly like a chain. Mm-hmm.
The axon is like facing that way. So the axon's like over here, and the dendrite connects to more dendrites.
Mm-hmm.
So the axon is
That's exactly right. So the dendrites are connecting to other neurons. When they get stimulated from that other neuron, they send the signal down through their cell body into their axon. And their axon is then connected to something else. Maybe it's another nerve, maybe it's a muscle. Remember we learned about the neuromuscular junction, right? Where the nerve comes into the muscle. That would be an axon of a neuron coming into that muscle. Maybe it's attached to a gland. So maybe it's going to actually make that gland produce some hormone. Maybe it's attached to a sensory receptor on your skin so that when you touch this cold table, actually it's kind of warm, you feel that heat. Does that make sense? So these axons can go to anything, but they're the things that are sending the signal out from the neuron. Sir?
It's kind of random, but like if you're flexing like your leg,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't like move. So does that mean like you're flexing both sides, like the flexor? Like if somebody says like flex your arm.
Oh, if you just tighten them up, you're co-contracting. You're doing both muscles at the same time. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Through the cell body, right? Because the cell body is like in the middle, and then down through the axon. Yep. I am telling you, friends, I'm giving you just general overviews, right? You read, oh, I have to get your papers. Don't let me forget. I need to get your papers before we go, 1 through 35. Okay? Let's just say at the end of class, let's put them here for me. Send them to me right now. Yeah, sure. All right. You notice, excuse me, you notice that they've got these yellow, they look like rolls of carpet that are surrounding the axon. What do we call those guys? That's myelin, okay? Myelin is an insulator. And the role of myelin is this. Not all nerves are covered with myelin. They call it a myelin sheath, this layer of myelin. Not all of them are. But this myelin, the point of it is it makes the signal go faster. It makes the signal be transmitted down the axon quicker. Because instead of it having to go all the way through the entire axon, it does a little dance. It literally hops from node to node. Do you see these spots where the axon peeks through? The little gray pieces where the axon peeks through? Those have a name. What are they called? Nodes of Ranvier. It's the gentleman who found them, right? And what happens is the impulse literally skips from node to node to node rather than just having to go through the entire axon. We're going to spend much more time talking about this, how that works. But the point is, if I want things to move fast, I want to cover it with myelin. So if I'm sending a signal from my brain all the way down to my toes, that's a long distance, right? Well, longer for some of us than others, but it's a long distance. So therefore, you want these nice myelinated axons that are covered and they can bounce quicker. Okay. So, I mean, they would gain a slight edge with that, sure. It's more about their center of gravity is lower, and it's easier for them to move that about. That's really more what it's about. Even tall guys, if they're good, stable runners, they'll kind of be in that more crouched position. Yeah. Are you comfortable at the end of the axon? Are these things called the synaptic knobs? And again, if you remember our picture of the neuromuscular junction, that's what they showed of the nerve, right? This yellow nerve with this little bulb on the end that was attached to the muscle. That's the synaptic knob, the synapse, right? Where two nerves or two things meet. That's what a synapse is. The myelin is produced by these Schwann cells. The Schwann, which is just a fun word to say. The Schwann cells are in the peripheral nervous system. Okay? So again, like the nerves in your arms, nerves in your legs. The central nervous system, the cells that produce the myelin in the central, those are called the oligodendrocytes. So same function, just different cells based upon whether they're central or peripheral. Okay, we're kind of bouncing through all these different types of nerves that are there, multipolar versus bipolar versus unipolar. Again, check them out. It's very easy to understand. It's just the amount of connections they're making. Sir?
The textbook says that oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells both create a myelin.
Right. They do the same function. Just the Schwann cells are in the peripheral nervous system. The oligodendrocytes are in the central nervous system. So brain and spinal cord for the oligos, everything else for the Schwanns. So same function. They both produce myelin to wrap up those axons. Okay? Any questions there? And here's kind of a zoomed in look of that myelin sheath that Schwann cell produces and wraps it around. Again, I always think of a roll of carpet. That's what I think it looks like when I see it. Or like a nice sweet roll. It's nice and that's tasty. All right, let's talk about synapses. Ooh, do they not have much here? Huh. Where are my synapses? Synapses here on page 233. I think this is where we're going to have to stop. Are you comfortable that synapse is simply a connection between two nerves? Between one nerve's axon and the other nerve's what? Dendrite, right? Axon's carrying the message. The dendrite is receiving the message. Okay? And you may, doesn't this not look almost exactly the same as the picture they showed you for the neuromuscular junction, right? And there's really no significant difference, right? That signal comes down the axon. It gets to that synaptic knob, and it tells these vesicles, which remember are the sacs, that are holding the neurotransmitters, telling them to release it. Because the two nerves don't actually touch. There's not actually saying to each other, hey, come on. There's no physical contact. That neurotransmitter going across is what sends the signal to make that nerve, that other nerve, fire. There's enough stuff that's in between. There's a fluid that's in between them, so I suppose theoretically they could come together for a bit of time, but again, it's all held in place by other supportive cells. So it's a good question. I don't think anything in particular, but it's just a way for the body to control, to have more control, that once one signal is sent from your brain, it doesn't go all the way to your toes with no control at all. Does that make sense? So I don't think anything crazy would happen, but I don't know. Good question. You're comfortable on the dendrite? There are these little receptors in your textbook that look like little Ys that are sticking up, right? And that's where the neurotransmitter will come and attach to basically tell that new nerve, that new neuron, hey, fire. The brain is telling us to do something. Go do it. Are you with me, my friends? Please.
So for
The synapse?
yes. So basically, the impulse is in the synaptic knob, which is at the end of the axon, and then the synaptic vessels release that neurotransmitter.
Yep.
And then
It goes across the synaptic cleft.
and then it binds to the
The
receptors.
receptors. which again, that starts the next neuron, the next neuron sending the signal down its body. And we're going to talk way more about how that signal works, but this is just the general piece. Any questions there, my friends? Quick, try and get those problems done before I have to collect them. All right, I think that's as far as I'm going to go with you today. I'm sure you've already read this piece on cell membrane potential. Hey guys, shh, shh. I'm sure you've already read this piece on cell membrane potential, as well as impulse conduction. This, I feel, is the more complicated pieces of this chapter, is understanding how these nerves actually work. There's a short answer question. That's one of the main questions they ask in your study guide about how this works. So I'm encouraging you, spend some time there. We'll do some talking about it tomorrow. But spend some time there between now and then. Okay? I'm going to stop this. I'd love for you, please, to bring up